They thought she was just another operator. The quiet one always watching, never speaking. 6 months on the team, no one had ever seen her fire a single shot. Then the forest turned into a killing ground. 9 enemy snipers hidden 30 meters up. Automatic fire from every direction. 2 teammates bleeding out. QRF 40 minutes away. That's when Eleanor Ellie Reynolds slid behind a fallen log, raised her rifle, and eliminated 9 hostiles in 14 minutes. Not a single miss. This is the story of the sniper they called Lowlight. The operator who proved that quiet doesn't mean weak. It means ready. And when the moment comes, she doesn't miss. Fort Bragg, North Carolina, 2023. The crack of rifles echoed across the range, each shot reverberating through the humid morning air. Falcon teams stood in perfect formation, weapons at the ready, faces carved from stone, as they waited for their commanding officer. Lieutenant Marcus Walsh approached with measured strides, his battle-worn face betraying nothing as his eyes scanned the 6 operators standing before him. 20 years of combat experience had taught him to read people, to spot weakness, to identify talent. But even after 6 months, Eleanor Reynolds remained an enigma. She stood at the end of the line, her posture perfect, her gaze focused on some distant point beyond the trees. Average height, athletic build, dark hair pulled back in a regulation bun. Nothing about her physical appearance suggested anything extraordinary. Yet something in her stillness unsettled Walsh. The way she seemed to absorb everything around her without revealing anything in return. "Deployment orders," Walsh announced, handing a folder to Sergeant James Malloy, his second in command. "Operation Frost Shadow. We leave at 0600 tomorrow." Reynolds didn't flinch, didn't shift her weight, didn't betray even the slightest reaction. But for a fraction of a second, Walsh thought he saw something flicker behind her eyes. Recognition, perhaps. Or was it apprehension? "Sir, what's the mission?" Malloy asked, his voice steady despite the excitement that rippled through the other team members. "Intelligence reports suspected weapons trafficking through the Montana border forests. We're to conduct surveillance and gather evidence for a potential joint task force operation." Walsh's gaze lingered on Reynolds. "Pack for cold weather and extended observation." Only then did she meet his eyes, and something in her gaze made the battle-hardened lieutenant momentarily uneasy. It wasn't fear or uncertainty he saw there, but a knowing depth that seemed out of place for someone with her limited field experience. "Questions?" Walsh asked, breaking the momentary silence. Staff Sergeant Ryan Ridley, the team's scout, stepped forward. "Sir, why us border ops usually go to regular infantry units?" "These aren't regular traffickers," Walsh replied. "Intelligence suggests former Special Forces operators may be involved. We need the best." As the team dispersed to prepare, Walsh noticed Reynolds moving with quiet efficiency toward the armory. 6 months and he still knew almost nothing about her beyond her perfect personnel file. Recruitment from the intelligence branch, top scores in every training exercise, exemplary fitness reports. On paper, she was the ideal operator. In the field, she was competent, reliable, but almost invisible. The kind of teammate who blended into the background, followed orders, carried her weight, and said almost nothing. He was about to follow when a hand clasped his shoulder. "Something about this mission bothering you, Marcus?" The voice was deep, weathered by age and decades of tobacco. Walsh turned to face Captain Thomas Old Ghost Shepard, the team's advisor and former sniper legend. At 68, Shepard was the oldest active consultant at Fort Bragg, a living relic from the Cold War era who had served in everything from East Germany to Desert Storm. His weathered face carried the lines of 1,000 missions, some documented in history books, others that would never be spoken of. "Just wondering about Reynolds," Walsh admitted. 6 months and she's still a mystery." Shepard's eyes crinkled at the corners, the ghost of a smile playing on his lips. "Sometimes the quiet ones are the ones to watch most closely." "She's good, I'll give her that, but there's something off, like she's holding back." "Everyone's holding something back, son." Shepard lit a cigarette, a habit the Army had long given up trying to break him of. "Question is whether what she's holding will help you or hurt you when things go sideways." Walsh frowned. "You know something I don't, Ghost?" "I know many things you don't," Shepard replied with a dry chuckle. "That's why they keep this old fossil around." He took a long drag of his cigarette, his eyes following Reynolds as she disappeared into the armory. "But I'll tell you this, I've seen her type before, back in '82 East Berlin. We had an asset never said more than 10 words a day, until the day she saved an entire extraction team by taking out 3 KGB snipers with a civilian hunting rifle. Walsh raised an eyebrow. You think Reynolds is some kind of hidden asset? I think, Shepard said deliberately, that you should be glad she's on your team and not someone else's. The armory smelled of gun oil and metal, a comforting scent to those who understood the precision and care that went into maintaining the instruments of their profession. Eleanor Reynolds moved methodically through her checklist, laying out each piece of equipment with practiced efficiency. Her hands paused over the SR-25 rifle case. The Knight's Armament semi-automatic sniper rifle had been standard issue for special operations for years. Chambered in 7.62 NATO with a 20-inch barrel and effective range of 800 meters, it was a reliable workhorse for designated marksmen. But Eleanor had never used hers, not once in 6 months. During training, she qualified with standard carbines showing competence but never excellence. Enough to avoid attention, but not enough to stand out. Just as she'd been instructed. Her fingers traced the outline of the case, a moment of indecision flickering across her face. Beautiful piece of machinery, isn't it? She turned to find Captain Shepard standing in the doorway, watching her with those penetrating gray eyes that seemed to look straight through her carefully constructed persona. Yes, sir, she answered simply. Shepard moved closer, his footsteps nearly silent despite his age. The walk of a predator who had spent decades moving through hostile territory. You know, he said conversationally, I carried an M40A1 in Desert Storm, beautiful rifle, not as fancy as what you kids have now, but she never let me down. He ran a gnarled hand over the SR-25 case. 24-inch barrel Macmillan fiberglass stock to replace the warping wooden ones from Vietnam. Fixed 10x inertial scope. 112 twist rate optimized for the M118 match-grade ammunition, Eleanor added without thinking. Effective out to 1,000 meters in the right hands. Shepard's eyes sparkled. Indeed, in the right hands. He studied her face. You know your weapons history, Reynolds. Eleanor carefully reset her expression to neutral. Basic knowledge from training, sir. The old captain didn't sound convinced. You know, back then we didn't have fancy rangefinders or ballistic calculators. We used what God gave us, eyes, instinct, and experience. He gestured outside to where the rest of the team was preparing. These young bucks trust their gadgets, but a true shooter trusts the wind on their face, the rhythm of their breath, the space between heartbeats. For a moment, Eleanor said nothing. Then, almost imperceptibly, she nodded. Montana's winds will be tricky, Shepard continued. Mountains create swirls and eddies. What reads as a 3 mph crosswind at your position might be 10 mph halfway to the target. You compensate by reading the trees, Eleanor said softly. The way the branches move tells you more than any wind meter. Shepard's weathered face broke into a genuine smile. Well, perhaps there's more to you than meets the eye, Reynolds. Before she could respond, Staff Sergeant William Bill Briggs burst into the armory, his large frame filling the doorway. At 28, he was the youngest and most aggressive member of the team, a weapons specialist with a quick temper and quicker trigger finger. Reynolds, he barked, Walsh wants you for the mission briefing. And he said, bring your long gun this time. Eleanor nodded, closing the rifle case with deliberate care. You ever actually fired that thing? Briggs asked, his tone somewhere between mocking and curious. When necessary, she replied, hoisting the case and brushing past him. As she left, she heard Shepard chuckling behind her. Briggs, the old man said, there's an old Russian proverb, the quiet wolf's teeth are the sharpest. Remember that. The mission briefing was precise and detailed, as all of Walsh's operations were. Intelligence photos displayed on the wall showed dense forest along the Montana-Canada border, rugged terrain that offered perfect concealment for illicit activities. Satellite imagery shows increased activity in this sector over the past 3 months, Walsh explained, pointing to a clearing surrounded by thick evergreens. Thermal signatures consistent with human movement, but carefully coordinated to avoid border patrol schedules. Petty Officer Harper Lynn, the team's medical specialist, studied the images with clinical precision. Looks like they're using the natural ravine as cover. Smart. Too smart for ordinary smugglers. Malloy added, his fingers tracing the topographical lines on the map. These patterns suggest military training. Walsh nodded grimly. That's what has command concerned. Possible connection to former Spetsnaz operators working with domestic extremists. At the mention of Spetsnaz, Reynolds's posture stiffened almost imperceptibly. Only Shepard, watching from the corner, seemed to notice. Our insertion point will be here. Walsh continued, circling a ridgeline 10 kilometers from the target area. We'll establish observation posts and monitor for 72 hours before determining next steps. Gear allocation, Ridley asked, already making mental calculations for the weight they'd be carrying. Standard recon package, night vision thermal communications array, minimal provisions. Will be resupplied by drone drop if the operation extends beyond initial parameters. Walsh's gaze settled on Reynolds. Reynolds, you'll be paired with Shepard for the northeast observation post. Surprise flickered across several faces. Shepard rarely participated in field operations anymore, serving primarily as an advisor and trainer. Got tired of you youngsters having all the fun, the old captain explained with a wry smile. Besides, these old bones could use some mountain air. Walsh continued assigning positions, but Eleanor was no longer fully listening. Her mind was racing, analyzing the implications of what she'd just heard. Spetsnaz connections, Montana border, the specific ravines shown in the satellite imagery. It couldn't be coincidence. The briefing concluded with final equipment checks and communications protocols. As the team dispersed, Eleanor felt a hand on her arm. Shepard, his expression now deadly serious. I requested to be paired with you, he said quietly. I think you know why. Eleanor met his gaze steadily. I'm not sure I do, sir. There's something about this mission that spooked you. I saw it the moment Walsh mentioned the location. I'm fine, sir. Shepard leaned closer. I was in Germany when the wall came down. After that, I tracked former Soviet special forces who didn't want to give up the game. Some came west, some went into private enterprise. Very lucrative skills, you understand. Eleanor said nothing, but her pulse quickened. Operation Frost Shadow, Shepard continued. Interesting name, don't you think? Reminds me of something from the old days. An operation that officially never happened. Sir, I should prepare my gear, Eleanor said, attempting to step past him. Shepard didn't move. When we're out there and things go sideways, and they will go sideways, I need to know what I'm dealing with. Not for me, but for the team. For a long moment, they stared at each other, a silent battle of wills. Finally, Eleanor spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. Kestrel. Shepard's eyes widened almost imperceptibly. Well, I'll be damned, he murmured. So that's what this is about. Before Eleanor could respond, Walsh called for final gear inspection. With a last meaningful glance at Shepard, she turned and walked away, her heart hammering against her ribs. She had said too much already. One word. But to someone like Shepard, one word was all it took. The military transport plane hummed with subdued energy as it cut through the night sky toward Montana. Inside, Falcon Team sat in contemplative silence, each member processing the mission in their own way. Briggs cleaned his weapon for the third time, a ritual that centered his chaotic energy. Malloy reviewed the terrain maps with methodical precision. Ridley dozed, conserving strength for the long days ahead. Harper organized her medical supplies, ensuring every life-saving tool was exactly where it needed to be. In the rear of the aircraft, Eleanor sat alone, eyes closed but fully alert. To anyone watching, she appeared to be sleeping. In reality, her mind was reconstructing every detail of the mission briefing, searching for patterns, connections, threats. The seat beside her creaked as Shepard lowered his aging frame into it. For several minutes, he said nothing, just stared ahead at the dimly lit interior of the plane. M40A1. He finally said, his voice pitched low enough that only she could hear. Best damn rifle I ever used. In Basra, 1991, I took out an Iraqi sniper at 247 meters. Know how I spotted him? Eleanor opened her eyes but remained silent. Birds, Shepard continued. There was a pattern to how they flew over one particular area. Unnatural. Every other sniper in the unit was looking at windows' rooftops. I was watching the birds. He turned to face her. That's the difference between a shooter and a hunter. Why are you telling me this? Eleanor asked quietly. Because I want you to know that I understand what it means to see patterns others miss. His weathered hand reached into his pocket, retrieving what appeared to be an old, worn bullet casing. This was the round that took that shot. I keep it to remind myself that survival isn't about the weapon. It's about awareness. Eleanor studied the old man's face, searching for hidden meaning. Kestrel, Shepard said softly, top secret counter-sniper program. Started after 9/11. Highly classified, highly effective. His eyes narrowed. Officially disbanded 2 years ago. Eleanor's breath caught. I trained at Michael Keller in 1998, Shepard interrupted, before he went on to train the first Kestrel operators. The name hit Eleanor like a physical blow. Michael Keller, her mentor, the man who had shaped her into the weapon she had become. You knew Keller, she whispered. Shepard nodded. One of the best natural talents I ever saw. He could read wind patterns like most men read billboards. A sudden wave of emotion threatened to break through Eleanor's carefully maintained facade. She turned away, focusing on controlling her breathing. This mission, Shepard continued, his voice even lower. It's not about weapons trafficking, is it? Eleanor closed her eyes again. I can't discuss this, sir. You don't need to, but let me tell you what I think. Shepard leaned closer. I think whatever we're walking into is connected to why Kestrel was shut down, and I think you know more than you're saying. The plane hit a pocket of turbulence, jostling the passengers. Across the aisle, Walsh glanced in their direction, his expression questioning. All I care about is getting my team home safely, Shepard concluded, straightening up. Whatever secrets you're carrying, they're yours to keep, until they put my people at risk. Then we have a problem. Are we clear? Eleanor met his gaze evenly. Crystal clear, sir. As Shepard moved back to his original seat, Eleanor felt a cold certainty settling in her stomach. The old man was right. This mission was far more than a simple reconnaissance operation. And before it was over, secrets she had buried deep would inevitably come to light. She thought of the SR-25 rifle stored securely in the plane's cargo hold. 6 months without firing a shot, 6 months of careful anonymity, of blending in, of being unremarkable. That was about to end, and when it did, nothing would be the same again. The Montana forest loomed dark and imposing as Falcon Team made their final approach to the insertion point. The pre-dawn air carried a biting chill, the kind that seeps through layers and settles in the bones. Perfect conditions for the work ahead. Discomfort kept senses' sharp alertness high. They moved in formation through the dense undergrowth, each step deliberately placed to minimize sound. Walsh led with Malloy covering the rear. Between them, the team flowed like water around obstacles, their movements rehearsed through countless operations together. All except Eleanor, who moved with a different rhythm. More fluid, more precise, almost predatory. She carried her pack and rifle with practiced ease, her eyes constantly scanning, not the ground ahead, but the canopy above. The trees here were old-growth pines, some towering over 30 meters high, with thick concealing branches. Perfect hiding spots for anyone with the skill to use them. Ridge coming up, Walsh whispered into his comm. Observation points Alpha and Bravo as planned. Shepard and Reynolds taking the northeast quadrant. As the team approached the designated ridge, they began to split into their assigned pairs. Briggs and Malloy headed west, while Harper and Ridley set up the communications relay at the central position. Walsh would float between positions, coordinating intelligence. Eleanor followed Shepard along a narrow deer trail that wound toward their observation post. The old captain moved with surprising agility for his age, his footfalls nearly silent on the forest floor. Weather's turning, Shepard muttered, glancing skyward. Barometric pressure dropping. We'll have fog in the valleys by midday. Eleanor nodded, her attention suddenly focusing on a cluster of trees 50 meters ahead. She stopped, raising a closed fist, the signal to halt. Shepard froze instantly, his hand moving to his sidearm. What is it? Pine needles, Eleanor whispered. On the western side of that spruce. They're moving differently than the others. Shepard narrowed his eyes, studying the distant tree. To most observers, it would appear identical to the hundreds surrounding it, swaying gently in the morning breeze. Cross current, Eleanor continued. Natural wind from the north, but there's disruption in the pattern. Someone's been through here recently. Disturbed the airflow. A slow smile spread across Shepard's face. Keller taught you well. They adjusted their route, giving the area wide berth. 20 minutes later, they reached their observation post, a natural depression protected by a fallen log and overhanging rock formation. Perfect concealment with clear sight lines to the valley below. Eleanor began setting up her equipment methodically, first establishing their communications link, then unpacking her observation tools. The SR-25 remained in its case untouched. You're not setting up your rifle? Shepard asked, already adjusting the scope on his own weapon. Not yet, Eleanor replied, focusing instead on her high-powered binoculars. This is a surveillance operation. Shepard gave her a knowing look. Sure it is. For the next several hours, they observed in silence. Through her binoculars, Eleanor cataloged every detail of the valley below. The patterns of wildlife movement, the way sunlight filtered through gaps in the canopy, the almost imperceptible signs of human presence that most would miss. Broken twigs, compressed soil, subtle changes in the natural order. Walsh, this is Ghost, Shepard finally spoke into his comm. Northeast quadrant is showing signs of recent movement. Multiple parties professional spacing. Recommend heightened alert. Copy that, Walsh's voice crackled back. Maintain position and continue observation. All teams reporting similar indicators. As the sun climbed higher, Eleanor's uneasiness grew. Something about this operation felt wrong. Too neat, too convenient. Her training had taught her to trust these instincts. They know we're here, she said quietly. Shepard glanced at her. What makes you say that? The signs are too obvious. Professionals wouldn't leave such clear tracks unless they wanted them found. Before Shepard could respond, Walsh's urgent voice came through their comms. All teams be advised. Satellite uplink showing thermal signatures converging on our position from the north. Multiple contacts, moving fast. Eleanor's body tensed, years of training taking over. It's a trap. The words had barely left her lips when the first shot cracked through the forest. A sickening thud followed by Malloy's pained cry over the comm. Contact Malloy's hit, Briggs's frantic voice reported, taking fire from elevated positions. Eleanor was already moving her body, responding before conscious thought. In one fluid motion, she unzipped the rifle case and assembled the SR-25, her fingers flying over the components with practiced precision. A second shot rang out, followed by Walsh's command, all teams find cover. We're surrounded, over the comm. Harper's voice was tight with urgency. Briggs is down, chest wound, he's bleeding out. Eleanor finished mounting the scope as Shepard positioned himself to provide covering fire. Walsh, this is Ghost, he barked into his comm. Northeast position intact. Reynolds and I have overwatch of the eastern approach. Roger that, Walsh replied, his voice steady despite the chaos. I'm with Harper and Ridley. Briggs critical, Malloy wounded but stable, requesting immediate exfil and air support. There was a moment of tense silence then. Base, this is Falcon Actual. We are under sniper fire. Multiple elevated shooters. Request immediate QRF and air support. The reply came back chilling in its finality. Falcon Actual, this is Base. QRF is 40 minutes out. Air assets grounded due to incoming weather system. You're on your own. 40 minutes. In a firefight, 40 minutes was an eternity. Briggs wouldn't last 10. More shots peppered their position, sending splinters of wood and rock flying. Through it all, Eleanor remained eerily calm, her breathing steady as she calibrated her scope. Reynolds, Shepard hissed, what are you doing? We need to move. Eleanor looked up, and the expression in her eyes made even the battle-hardened captain pause. Gone was the quiet, unremarkable team member. In her place was something else entirely. Focused, deadly resolute. Sir, she said, her voice low and even, I need 30 seconds of suppressive fire. Aim high, loud, not accurate. Just make them keep their heads down. What the hell are you talking about? Shepard demanded. I can find them all. Eleanor continued her tone, leaving no room for argument. But I need 30 seconds of noise and no one talking. Can you do that? Shepard studied her for a heartbeat, then keyed his comm. Walsh, this is Ghost. We're initiating suppressive fire for 30 seconds, followed by precision elimination. On my mark. Copy that, Walsh replied, though confusion was evident in his voice. All teams suppressive fire on Ghost's mark. 3, 2, 1 mark. The forest erupted in a cacophony of gunfire. Muzzle flashes punctuated the shadows as the Falcon team unleashed chaos into the canopy. Shell casings clattered on wet ground. The air turned white with smoke and shredded bark. And in that thunder, Eleanor moved. She crawled low and fast, hugging the earth as she repositioned to a fallen log 20 meters from their original location. The SR-25 gleamed dully beneath streaks of camouflage paint, its barrel tracking smoothly as she settled into position. The world narrowed to breath and rhythm. Her heart slowed. Through the smoke, her senses sharpened, catching the faintest anomalies in the forest canopy. A line too straight, the glint of glass behind, leaves the unnatural stillness amid swaying branches. The suppressive fire stopped. Silence returned like a knife. "Cease fire," Walsh ordered. "Report positions." No one answered. Only the wind moved through the trees. Eleanor's hands steadied on the rifle. When she spoke, it was barely above a whisper, but the comm carried it clearly to every team member. "Contact. Bearing 030, elevation 30 degrees. Range 320 meters. Wind 3 mph west to east." She exhaled and pressed the trigger. The SR-25 thundered once. The recoil punched her shoulder. Through her scope, she saw the figure fall. First the rifle, then the body tumbling through branches before vanishing below. One down. She didn't smile, didn't celebrate. She was already sliding backward, changing position, crawling to a ridge 40 meters right. "Never fire twice from the same spot," she murmured, almost to herself. Over comms, Walsh's voice was shaking. "Reynolds, what the hell did you just do?" She ignored him. "Give me another 30 seconds. Same pattern, then hold." There was no debate this time. All teams suppressive fire. Now, bullets ripped through branches again, chewing through green and brown. Eleanor sprinted through the undergrowth boots, whispering on damp soil. She dropped into her next position, behind a cluster of rocks, breathing evenly. Scope up. A brief flash of muzzle fire flickered high above. She caught it just enough to mark the second sniper. Range 280. Wind unchanged. One click right for drift. Another shot. Another body fell. Two down. Below her, the team began to realize the quiet one wasn't improvising. She was hunting. In the lull that followed, Walsh's voice came again, half disbelief, half awe. "Reynolds, you're a sniper." Through the static, Eleanor's voice came cold and precise. "No, sir. I'm a counter-sniper." The forest seemed to inhale at those words. Harper's frantic voice broke through the silence. "Briggs is crashing. 6 minutes, maybe less." Walsh's command was immediate. "Reynolds, do whatever you have to do. Take them all." Eleanor adjusted her scope, eyes locked on the canopy. Her voice dropped to a whisper only the forest could hear. 9 targets and 1 shooter. Let's get to work." The forest had gone silent again. Too silent. No echo, no movement, just the soft hiss of wind through shattered leaves. Eleanor Reynolds lay flat behind the fallen log cheek, pressed to the stock of her SR-25. The forest heartbeat matching her own. Her scope swept the canopy, searching methodically through the sea of green. Every inch of it looked the same to untrained eyes. Green shadows, twisting branches, shifting light. But to Eleanor, patterns spoke. Wind pushed from west to east at 3 miles per hour. Elevation 35 degrees, humidity high. She didn't need perfect conditions. She just needed the rhythm. "Falcon, we've got 0 visibility up here." Ridley's voice crackled through the comm. "We can't even tell where the shots are coming from." "Stay low," Walsh replied. "Let her work." Eleanor adjusted half a mil down a quarter right. Through the foliage, a thin vertical line betrayed itself. A rifle barrel painted green cutting through the curves of bark. She squeezed between breaths. The first round hit dead center. The shooter fell forward, breaking branches on the way down. Leaves fluttered. Silence swallowed everything again. 3 down. She exhaled slowly, rechambered, and crawled backward. Never twice from the same spot. Training from another life guided every move. Mud smeared her hands. Rain dripped from her helmet. She moved 30 meters left, where a cluster of stones formed a low ridge. As she settled in, a bullet slammed into the dirt inches from her leg. The impact kicked up earth, the sound cracking like thunder. She rolled behind a root heartbeat, spiking once, then steady again. The shooter had tracked her movement, but misjudged the angle. "Lieutenant," she whispered. "Return fire on my mark. Short bursts, 2 seconds." "Copy," Walsh said. "Mark." Falcon unleashed another storm. Rifles roared. Muzzle flashes sliced through smoke. The canopy lit up with chaos. And in that noise, Eleanor found her 4th target. A silhouette crouched along a thick branch, trying to relocate. Range 280. A just drop by 0.4 mils. 1 clean pull. The enemy fell sideways, rifles spinning into the fog below. 4 down. Harper's voice cracked over comms. "Briggs is fading. Pulse weak. He's got maybe 10 minutes. Then we end this in 9, Eleanor muttered. The forest responded with a whisper of movement. Another sniper slid across a branch, barely visible through gaps in the leaves. Eleanor tracked him, mid-stride, leading by half a body width. The shot hit before the sound reached him. He dropped like a rag doll. 5 down. Walsh's voice came back, a mix of disbelief and control. Reynolds, how in God's name are you seeing them? I'm not, she said quietly. I'm reading the trees. For a few long seconds, nothing moved. Then a shadow detached from the canopy, climbing down fast. He was abandoning position. Smart move. Wrong timing. At 15 meters from the ground, he paused to switch grip. Eleanor caught him mid-motion. Crosshair at the ribs. The round struck. He fell the rest of the way. Lifeless. 6. Her breathing slowed again. She could hear the soft thud of Harper's compressions in the distance. She had minutes, maybe less. The 6th target revealed himself through arrogance, firing blind bursts toward Falcon's line. The muzzle flash gave him away. Range 350, partial cover, moderate wind. She adjusted a click, left, fired through the light. The flash disappeared. 7 down. A rush of adrenaline washed over her, but her hands stayed steady. The SR-25 was running hot now, the metal warm against her palms. She worked the bolt gently, feeling the smooth precision of every movement. 2 more shooters started shifting east, running across the canopy like shadows. She caught one as he moved from one trunk to another. Distance climbing, 460, 500 meters. She tracked calculated wind drift, 10 miles per cross led by 1 meter. Trigger pull perfect. The figure stumbled, mid-stride, toppled into empty space. 8. The last one was desperate now, trying to escape through the east tree line. His radio crackled faintly. Voices in another language panicked, calling for extraction that would never come. Lieutenant, Eleanor said, 1 remaining moving east downhill. He won't make it far. Copy that. You have full clearance. She repositioned to the high ridge muddy slope. Elevation plus 20 degrees. Her scope scanned through drifting smoke. The 9th sniper bar appeared, running hard, rifle bouncing on his back. Range 620 uphill. Wind cross Tinamom, led by 1 body length. Eleanor took a breath. Half exhale. Pressed the trigger. The impact folded him mid-step. He slid forward, disappearing into the ferns. 9 kills, 14 minutes, 0 misses. For a long moment there was nothing. Just smoke and quiet breathing through radios. Reynolds, Walsh's voice came low and tentative. Is it over? She scanned one last time, eyes calm. All clear, sir. The canopy's empty. Copy that, he said softly. And Reynolds, remind me never to doubt the quiet ones again. Eleanor let the rifle rest across her chest, eyes on the drifting smoke above. Quiet doesn't mean unready, she whispered. It just means waiting for the right moment. The forest smelled of blood and smoke. Falcon platoon was alive, but barely. Harper's hands were slick with crimson as she fought to keep Briggs breathing. Walsh crouched beside Malloy, pressing a bandage over the gash in his shoulder. Reynolds, he called softly over comms. Status, Eleanor's reply came calm and clipped. All 9 confirmed down, but we've got movement. Secondary unit 400 meters north and closing. Walsh froze. How many? Unknown. Radio chatter suggests 6 to 8. I'll delay them. He didn't ask how. He'd stopped asking. Do it. Eleanor crawled up the muddy slope to a new vantage point. Her knees sank into the soil, the smell of pine sap thick in her lungs. The ridge overlooked a clearing scarred by broken branches. Every tree above riddled with bullet holes. Through her scope, she saw shapes moving between trunks. Fast. Disciplined. A follow-up team sweeping in to finish what the snipers couldn't. She settled behind a mossy boulder, pulling the rifle tight to her shoulder. The SR-25 had fired 9 rounds already. The barrel shimmered faintly with heat. She lined up the lead man. Range 450, wind 6 miles quartering. Cross slope to the right. The first shot cracked through the silence. The lead soldier went down instantly, collapsing before he could signal. The rest scattered, vanishing into the brush. Reynolds, what was that? Walsh's voice demanded. Just cleaning up the mess, she said. From below, Ridley whispered, she's still going, Jesus. Eleanor shifted left, using the ridge's incline to mask her position. The world slowed to calculations, each heartbeat a metronome. Every rustle of leaves a clue. She watched for unnatural motion, branches bending against the wind, not with it. That's where people hid. A flicker of movement near a fallen log. A figure crawled, low, rifle in hand. Range 370. Adjust one click down for gravity, one right for drift. Breath steady. Trigger squeeze. The figure's head snapped back. Silence followed. Two down, she whispered. Walsh looked toward the sound, still half disbelieving. Reynolds, you can't take them all. Sir, she cut in quietly, that's exactly what I'm doing. For a moment, no one spoke. The only sound was wind cutting through the trees and Harper counting compressions under her breath. Another target broke cover, a runner sprinting across open ground. Eleanor tracked him smoothly, adjusting for lead. Range increasing 500, 520, 540. Her trigger broke clean. The shot reached him like a whisper. He stumbled, mid-stride, fell forward into dirt. 3, she murmured. Then the counterattack came. Two rifles opened up in her direction, rounds slamming into the ridge around her, sending shards of rock flying. Eleanor rolled sideways, tucked into a depression. Dirt sprayed her face. She didn't flinch. They thought they had her pinned. They were wrong. She rolled onto her back, angled the rifle upward toward the ridge line above. Range 300. She aimed at the shadow of a muzzle flash between branches. One heartbeat. Fire. The gunfire stopped. 4 down, she said. Harper's voice cracked over comms, exhausted. Briggs has a pulse. Weak, but holding. Good, Eleanor said softly. Let's keep it that way. She slid to a higher perch overlooking the eastern slope. The last 2 shooters were retreating downhill, breaking formation. They were done fighting, just trying to survive. But survival was a luxury they'd forfeited when they ambushed Falcon. Eleanor tracked the first one, range 600 and climbing. The man was moving fast through brush, maybe 6 meters per second. She led by a full meter, adjusted 1 mil high for elevation. Wind had shifted again, gusting 12 meters per hour. Her breathing steadied, fingers slow on the trigger. The SR-25 thundered. The man dropped mid-run momentum, carrying him forward into the ferns. She reloaded. 1 round left in the mag. 1 enemy left in the forest. Reynolds, that's enough, Walsh called. QRF's 2 minutes out. Negative, she said. 1 still breathing. Through the scope, she saw him. A single silhouette weaving between trunks, desperate, slipping in mud. He was running uphill toward the extraction ridge. Range 680, wind pushing harder, visibility low. It was at the edge of possibility. Eleanor's voice was almost a whisper. Let's end this right. She adjusted for range, crosswind, humidity, and elevation drop, all in her head, all within seconds. Her world narrowed to the reticle and the rhythm of her pulse. She exhaled halfway. The sound of her heartbeat vanished. The trigger broke like glass. A heartbeat later, 680 meters away, the last enemy soldier fell. The echo of the shot rolled through the forest like thunder, fading into silence. Eleanor stayed behind the rifle for a long moment, listening. No return fire, no movement. Just the forest breathing again. Falcon actual, she said, voice steady. All hostiles neutralized, perimeter clear. Walsh's response came quiet, almost reverent. Copy that, Reynolds. You just saved every one of us. As QRF rotors thundered overhead, Eleanor ejected her last spent casing and slipped it into her pocket. A small souvenir, not of pride, but of proof. She stood slowly, shoulders aching from recoil and hours of crawling. Around her, the forest shimmered with dust and sunlight filtering through broken branches. 15 kills, 14 minutes, 0 misses. It would sound impossible to anyone else. But to Eleanor, it was just another day surviving what she'd been trained to do. 3 days later, Falcon team sat inside a windowless debriefing room at Fort Bragg. The air smelled faintly of gun oil and coffee gone stale. Eleanor sat at the end of the table, uniform, pressed expression, unreadable. Her rifle was locked away. Her silence wasn't. Across from her, Lieutenant Walsh stood beside 3 officers, Naval Special Warfare Command Intelligence and a JSOC liaison. The captain flipped open a thick folder stamped classified. 15 confirmed kills, he said. 14 minutes, 15 rounds fired. No misses. He looked up. That correct, petty officer? Yes, sir, Adana replied calmly. Conditions weren't ideal, but I adjusted. The captain leaned back, brows furrowed. Adjusted, he repeated, almost disbelieving. Range up to 680 meters, moving targets, dense canopy, cross winds at 12 mph. And you adjusted. Eleanor didn't answer. Her silence said enough. The intelligence officer beside him slid a second file across the table. We reviewed your record. There's a gap. 2 years, no operational data, no unit listed. That's unusual even for Tier 1 personnel. Walsh looked at Eleanor. He already suspected. You were with a black unit, he said softly. She met his eyes. Detachment Kestrel, sir. Counter-sniper operations. Joint Special Operations Command. 74 missions. The room went still. Even the hum of the overhead lights seemed to pause. The JSOC liaison spoke next. Your kill ratio, 112 confirmed over 2 years. That's unprecedented. Eleanor exhaled, once eyes on the table. It wasn't about numbers. It was about stopping theirs. The captain closed the file, folding his hands. You could have stayed with them. Why transfer to a regular platoon? Because Kestrel was solo work, she said. Long deployments, zero communication, no teammates, just a rifle and a radio silence that eats at you. I'd had enough of ghosts. Walsh gave a faint nod, finally understanding the weight behind her calm. The intelligence officer tapped the folder again. We're reactivating Kestrel, he said quietly, and we need someone who's already walked that road. Eleanor's answer came without hesitation. Respectfully, sir, I'm done walking it alone. The captain studied her for a long moment. Then you'll remain with Falcon as lead marksman. You'll train the next generation. Teach them how to survive people like you. A flicker of humor touched her voice. That might take a while. Walsh finally spoke. For what it's worth, she's already done that. Everyone here learned something in that forest. The captain nodded. You'll also be put in for a commendation medal with Valor Device, possibly a Silver Star, depending on review. Eleanor shifted slightly in her chair. I didn't do it for medals, sir. I did it because 12 lives depended on it. That's why you're getting one, the captain said simply. The briefing ended without ceremony. Papers closed, chairs scraped against tile. The officers left one by one until only Eleanor and Walsh remained. The silence that followed felt heavier than gunfire. He leaned against the wall, arms crossed. You ever going to tell me how you saw them up there? Eleanor gave a faint smile. It's not about seeing, it's about noticing. The forest talks if you listen long enough. Walsh shook his head. You really are something else. She looked at him. No, sir, I'm just tired of fighting shadows. As she rose to leave, Captain Shepard appeared in the doorway, his weathered face grave. The older man nodded to Walsh, then focused on Eleanor. We need to talk, he said quietly. Alone. Good. The firing range stretched empty and quiet in the fading afternoon light. Eleanor sat cleaning her rifle, the familiar routine settling her thoughts. The weapon lay disassembled before her, each piece meticulously maintained. Footsteps approached from behind. Too heavy for Walsh, too purposeful for most. Thomas Shepard, she said without turning. Army Special Forces sniper instructor. 36 confirmed kills across 4 conflicts. Call sign Ghost because you never needed a spotter. Shepard chuckled, pulling up a seat beside her. Been reading my file, Reynolds. Keller had a picture of you on his wall, called you the best he ever saw. And yet you've doubled my count. Eleanor's hands paused on the barrel she was cleaning. Different war, different rules. Maybe. Shepard lit a cigarette, ignoring the no smoking sign. But there's more to it than that. You're a natural, like Keller was. Eleanor continued her methodical cleaning, saying nothing. I'm not here to reminisce, Shepard said, his tone hardening. I'm here about Helios. The bore brush in Eleanor's hand stopped mid-stroke. For a moment, neither spoke. The only sound was the distant crack of rifles from the main range. Helios was eliminated, she finally said. Kestrel's last mission. 2 years ago. Apparently not. Shepard took a long drag from his cigarette. Those were not ordinary mercs in Montana. Analysis came back on their weapons and equipment. Helios' signature all over it. Eleanor's eyes darkened. That's impossible. Is it? Shepard leaned forward. The operation that supposedly wiped them out. You were there, were not you, Ukraine-Belarus border? February 2. The memories rushed back unbidden. Snow falling through pine branches. Blood freezing on white ground. Radio silence broken by screams. My team went in, she said, voice barely audible. 5 operators. I was the only one who came out. And how many of them did you confirm eliminated? Eleanor met his gaze. All of them, including Viktor Petrov. Viper, Shepard nodded. Spetsnaz's best before he went private. The man who killed more Western snipers than anyone since Vietnam. I put a 175-grain hollow point through his chest myself, Eleanor insisted. Watched him fall through thermal. No one survives that. Shepard's weathered face showed no emotion as he pulled a satellite photograph from his jacket pocket and laid it on the table. The image showed a man with a distinctive scar across his right cheek walking through what appeared to be a military compound. This was taken 3 weeks ago. Black Sea region. Eleanor stared at the image, blood draining from her face. It's not possible. Look at his right shoulder, Shepard pointed. The way he carries it lower than the left. That's what happens when a high-velocity round tears through your upper chest. Doesn't kill you, but never quite heals right either. I didn't miss, Eleanor whispered. No, but sometimes even the perfect shot isn't enough. Shepard tapped the photo. Petrov's alive, and he's rebuilding Helios. That operation in Montana wasn't random. They knew exactly who would be sent to investigate. Eleanor's mind raced, piecing together the implications. It was a trap, for me. For Kestrel, Shepard corrected, or what's left of it, which is basically just you. He fixed her with a penetrating stare. How many of your former unit are still alive? She thought of the faces, the names she'd tried to forget. 3, maybe 4, if they stayed off the grid. Well, they'd better dig deeper because Viper's hunting you all. Shepard crushed his cigarette under his boot, and unlike you, he doesn't mind civilian casualties. Eleanor reassembled her rifle with swift, practiced movements, her earlier calm replaced by cold determination. The intelligence officer mentioned reactivating Kestrel, she said. This is why. Shepard nodded. Top brass needs a counter-sniper unit, but more importantly, they need someone who knows Helios, who knows Viper. I told them I won't go back to solo work. And you won't have to. Shepard stood wincing slightly at the stiffness in his joints. That's why I'm here. Command wants me to head the new program, train a new generation, but I need a partner who's been there. Eleanor looked up, surprise evident in her expression. You've got skills I never had, the old captain continued, and I've got experience you haven't lived long enough to gain. Between us, maybe we can build something that doesn't eat its own. Why me, she asked. There are other snipers. Shooters, Shepard corrected. There are other shooters. You're a hunter. That's different. He extended a hand. What do you say Reynolds ready to build something instead of just killing? Eleanor stood facing the old warrior. For the first time in years, she felt something close to hope. On one condition, she said, my team comes too. Falcon stays together. Shepard smiled. Already cleared with command. Walsh will command the operational element. You and I handle training and special missions. And Viper, the old man's smile faded. That's a separate conversation. One we'll have soon enough. As they walked toward the exit, Shepard glanced at her. By the way, I hear they've given you a nickname already. Let me guess, Eleanor said dryly. Something dramatic. Lowlight, he replied, because you never need the spotlight. You just end the fight before anyone sees it coming. Eleanor was silent for a long moment, then she nodded once. That's fair. The night settled over Fort Bragg like a shroud, stars piercing the clear sky in brilliant patterns. Eleanor stood alone on the firing range, the darkness enveloping her like an old friend. In the distance, helicopters cut through the air, their rotors beating a steady rhythm against the sky. For the first time in months, she felt exposed. The careful anonymity she'd cultivated with Falcon had been shattered in 14 minutes of precision and death. Now she was visible again, a target as much as a shooter. She thought of Viper, the man she'd believed dead, the ghost now hunting her. Their first encounter had been in Syria 6 years earlier. She'd been part of a standard sniper team then before Kestrel. He'd killed her spotter with a shot that should have been impossible, the bullet passing through a gap in a wall no wider than a cigarette. The memory of that day still burned. She'd spent the next 2 years becoming what she needed to be to ensure it never happened again. Kestrel had been her forged, transforming skill into something darker, more lethal. The sound of approaching footsteps pulled her from the memory, multiple sets moving with military precision. She recognized Walsh's gait immediately, along with Malloy's slightly favoring his wounded shoulder. Ridley and Harper followed with a fifth set she identified as Briggs, still unsteady from his injuries but walking. Thought we'd find you here, Walsh said, stopping a respectful distance away. Eleanor turned. In the faint light from the distant barracks, she could see their faces. Uncertain, curious, perhaps even a little wary. They were seeing her clearly for the first time. "How's the shoulder, Malloy?" she asked. "Hurts like hell," he replied with a grin. "Worth it to see what you did to those bastards." An awkward silence followed. These men and women had fought beside her for 6 months, trusting her with their lives, without knowing who or what she really was. Now everything had changed. "Shepard told me about the new unit," Walsh finally said. "Said you made sure we were all included." Eleanor nodded. "We work well together." "Even though you have been holding back," Ridley asked, no accusation in his tone, just honest curiosity. "Everyone holds something back," she replied, echoing Shepard's words from days earlier. "It's what you bring forward that matters." Briggs stepped closer, moving gingerly. His face, usually animated with youthful confidence, was serious. "Harper says I wouldn't have made it without you," he said simply. 15 targets, 14 minutes. That's not just training. That's something else, because Eleanor met his gaze. "It's what I was built for." "No, Walsh interjected. "It's who you chose to be when it mattered." He extended his hand. "Thank you for bringing my team home." She took his hand, feeling the solid grip of acceptance. One by one, the others followed suit, a silent reaffirmation of trust. "Shepard also mentioned a new threat," Harper said. "Someone called Viper." Eleanor's expression hardened. "Viktor Petrov, former Spetsnaz sniper, now running a mercenary outfit called Helios, specializes in elimination of high-value targets in counterintelligence operations." "And he's got a personal grudge against you," Walsh added. "Against Kestrel," Eleanor corrected. "I'm just the last one he can find." Malloy let out a low whistle. "So we're not just forming a new unit, we're going hunting." "Eventually," Eleanor confirmed. "First we train. Helios operators are former special forces from a dozen countries. They're good, very good. Better than 15 kills in 14 minutes. Ridley asked, a hint of his old cocky smile returning. For the first time since they'd known her, Eleanor Reynolds smiled, a genuine expression that transformed her face. "We're about to find out." As the team fell into discussion about the new mission, Eleanor felt the weight of her solitude lifting. For 2 years with Kestrel, she had been a weapon deployed alone, striking from shadows. Now she was something different, something more. Walsh caught her eye, nodding toward the distant barracks. "Team meeting at 0600. Shepard wants to brief us on the training regimen." "I'll be there," she promised. As they turned to leave, Briggs paused. "Hey, Reynolds, is it true what they're calling you now, Lowlight?" She considered the name, testing its fit. "Apparently." "It's fitting," he said, "but I think there's more to it than just being deadly in the dark." "What do you mean?" Briggs shrugged. "Lowlight doesn't mean no light. It means finding enough to see by when others can't." He tapped his chest where the bullet had nearly taken his life. "You found us in the darkness, brought us home." As they walked away, Eleanor remained contemplating his words. The night sky stretched endlessly above stars, piercing the darkness with ancient light. Somewhere out there, Viper was hunting, gathering his forces, preparing for a reckoning. But for the first time since Kestrel fell, Eleanor Reynolds wasn't hunting alone. Lowlight. She could live with that name. Because darkness didn't frighten her anymore. It never had. The dark was where she thrived, where she became more than just a shooter. In the shadows, she became a hunter. And hunters always found their prey. The SR-25 rested comfortably against her shoulder as she gazed up at the star-filled sky. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new training, new bonds with the team that had become more than just colleagues. But tonight she allowed herself this moment of peace, knowing it wouldn't last. The quiet before the next storm. Because when Viper finally showed himself, and he would, Lowlight would be waiting, ready, and when the moment came, she wouldn't miss. When the grim Souther fell, the forest smelled of blood and smoke. Falcon Team was alive, but barely. Harper's hands were slick with crimson as she fought to keep Briggs breathing. Walsh crouched beside Malloy, pressing a bandage over the gash in his shoulder. Ridley scanned the perimeter, rifle at the ready. "Reynolds," Walsh called softly over comms. "Status?" Eleanor's reply came calm and clipped. "All hostiles neutralized. Perimeter secure." The distant thrum of helicopter rotors grew louder as the QRF finally approached. 15 kills in 14 minutes had bought them the time they needed. The team would survive. As the Black Hawk touched down in the small clearing, Medical personnel rushed toward Briggs's prone form. Harper briefed them in rapid clinical terms while the evacuation team secured the wounded. Walsh supervised the loading, his face grim but composed. Eleanor remained at her elevated position, watching, always watching. Her eyes scanned the tree line methodically, the SR-25 rifle still warm in her hands. The mission was over, but instinct kept her vigilant. A flicker of movement caught her eye. Something at the forest's edge, 800 meters east. A shadow detaching itself from the darkness, then melting away into the trees. Not one of theirs, not a random civilian in these remote woods. Through her scope, she caught only a glimpse, the hint of a profile, a reflection of light on what might have been a facial scar. Her blood turned cold. Viktor Petrov, Viper, the man she'd supposedly killed 2 years ago at the Ukraine-Belarus border, the man who had been hunting Kestrel operators ever since. She centered her crosshairs where the figure had been, but the forest stood empty now. Had she imagined it? A phantom from her past conjured by adrenaline and exhaustion. "Reynolds, we're leaving!" Walsh's voice crackled through her comms. "Final sweep and get to the LZ." Eleanor hesitated, eyes still fixed on that distant spot. Then professional discipline reasserted itself. She secured her position, collected her brass, and moved with silent efficiency down the ridge toward the extraction point. As the helicopter lifted off, she cast one final glance at the forest below. The setting sun cast long shadows through the trees, turning the battlefield into a tapestry of light and dark. The perfect hunting ground for predators. And somewhere in those shadows, she was certain Viper was watching. Fort Bragg Combat Training Facility, 3 weeks later. Again. Eleanor commanded, her voice cutting through the pre-dawn chill. 5 snipers lay prone on the damp earth rifles positioned with varying degrees of precision. Falcon Team had expanded into what command was informally calling Kestrel 2.0, a specialized counter-sniper unit combining Eleanor's lethal expertise with Shepard's decades of experience. Walsh approached from behind, boots crunching on frost-covered grass. "You're pushing them hard," he observed quietly. "Not hard enough," Eleanor replied, kneeling beside Ridley to adjust his position slightly. "Helios won't give second chances." The training regimen had been brutal. 16-hour days focused on advanced marksmanship, environmental reading, and counter-surveillance techniques. Eleanor taught as she'd been trained, with relentless precision and zero tolerance for error. "Briggs," she called out, "what's wrong with your position?" The young operator, still recovering from his chest wound, grimaced in frustration. "I don't know, ma'am." "Your shadow," Eleanor said, pointing to the faint outline his body cast in the growing dawn light. "It's breaking the natural pattern of the ground. At 800 meters, a trained observer would spot that disruption instantly." Briggs adjusted, tucking himself lower into the earth. "Better," she acknowledged. "Remember, we're not just shooting. We're hunting people who hunt others for a living." From his observation point, Captain Shepard watched with quiet approval. The old sniper had seen Eleanor transform over the past 3 weeks, from the solitary weapon Kestrel had forged to something more valuable, a teacher. She was giving these operators something that couldn't be found in any manual. "All right, commence firing," Eleanor ordered, stepping back. 5 rounds, variable winds, full environmental calculation. Rifles cracked in disciplined succession. Through her binoculars, Eleanor observed the target impacts downrange. Tighter groupings than the week before, but still not where they needed to be. "They're improving," Walsh commented, standing beside her. "Not fast enough," she replied, lowering the binoculars. "Petrov's building something big. Intelligence reports suggest he's recruited at least 30 former Special Forces operators into Helios over the past year." Walsh nodded grimly. "JSOC thinks they're planning something on American soil. A high-profile target, possibly political." "It's not his usual pattern," Eleanor said, frowning. "Viper typically operates in conflict zones, areas with minimal accountability where his skills command premium rates." "People change," Walsh observed, "especially when they're driven by something personal." Eleanor's expression hardened. "This isn't just about revenge. Petrov's too professional for that." "Then what?" "I don't know yet," she admitted. "But whatever it is, it's connected to why Kestrel was disbanded in the first place." Before Walsh could respond, Shepard approached, his weathered face serious. "Command needs us. New intelligence just came in." The briefing room was secured at the highest level. Only Shepard, Eleanor, Walsh, and 2 intelligence officers were present. On the central screen, satellite imagery showed a compound nestled into remote woodland on the Canadian side of the border. This facility was identified 3 days ago through signal intelligence. The senior analyst explained a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses and the intense focus of someone who spent too much time staring at data. We believe it's a Helios forward operating base. How confident is that assessment? Shepard asked. 90%. We've confirmed at least 3 former Russian Special Forces operators on site, plus equipment signatures consistent with their known inventory. Eleanor studied the imagery, eyes narrowed. It's too obvious, she said finally. All heads turned toward her. Explain, Walsh prompted. Petrov is too disciplined for this, Eleanor said, gesturing at the screen. Setting up this close to the border, allowing electronic emissions to be detected, it's sloppy. He's not sloppy. The intelligence officer frowned. The evidence is clear. It's meant to be clear. Eleanor cut him off. This isn't their actual base. It's bait. Shepard nodded slowly, seeing her logic. Designed to draw us in, specifically to draw you in. Exactly. Eleanor pointed to the facility's layout. Notice the elevated positions around the perimeter, perfect sniper nests with interlocking fields of fire. Anyone approaching would be channeled into a kill zone. Walsh leaned forward, studying the imagery with new understanding. So what's their real plan? That's what concerns me, Eleanor replied. Imamine, if this is the distraction, where's the actual operation? The second intelligence officer, who had remained silent until now, placed a file on the table. This may be relevant. 3 former Kestrel operators have been found dead in the past month. 2 in Europe, 1 in South America. Eleanor's blood ran cold. Who? Michael Torres in Colombia. Stephen Riker in Germany. Annalise Duran in Morocco. Names and faces flashed through Eleanor's memory. Torres, the demolitions expert who could disappear in any urban environment. Riker, whose patience on a hide site was legendary. Durand, who could outshoot most men on the program and never made excuses. All gone. How? She asked, her voice steady despite the emotion churning beneath. Single shots, extreme range, professional hits. Viper, Shepard said grimly. Eleanor nodded. He's eliminating potential threats before launching his main operation. Which means you're on his list, Walsh added, concern evident in his tone. I've been on his list since Belarus, Eleanor replied. The difference is now I know he's coming. Shepard tapped the satellite imagery thoughtfully. So we have a decoy base and 3 dead Kestrel operators. What's the connection? Eleanor stared at the images, mind racing through possibilities. The original Kestrel mission that supposedly eliminated Helios. There's something about it we're missing. That operation is still highly classified, the intelligence officer noted. Most of the details were compartmentalized. Then it's time to decompartmentalize, Shepard stated firmly. If we're going to counter Petrov, we need the full picture. The intelligence officers exchanged glances, then the senior one nodded reluctantly. I'll make the request to JSOC, but it will take time. Time we may not have, Eleanor said, rising from her chair. In the meantime, we train harder, and we prepare for Viper to make his move. As they filed out of the briefing room, Shepard held Eleanor back with a gentle hand on her arm. There's something else you should know, he said quietly. Command has authorized a direct action mission against the Canadian facility. Eleanor's eyes widened slightly. When 72 hours, Delta Force is prepping now. They're walking into a trap, she said immediately. Probably, Shepard agreed, but the political pressure is too great. They need to show action. Eleanor's jaw tightened. Then we need to be there. If Viper's involved, those Delta operators will need counter-sniper support they can't provide themselves. I've already made that case, Shepard said with a grim smile. Guess who's taking point on Overwatch? Yeah. The armory hummed with quiet efficiency as Eleanor prepared her equipment. The SR-25 lay disassembled on the workbench, each component meticulously cleaned and inspected. For this mission, she'd added a specialized thermal scope and sound suppressor, tools that might provide the crucial edge against Petrov. The door opened behind her. She knew from the footsteps it was Briggs, still moving gingerly from his healing wounds. Should you be up? She asked without turning. Doc cleared me for light duty, he replied, moving to stand beside her. So Walsh says you're headed out tonight. Eleanor continued her preparations in silence. It's him, isn't it? Briggs pressed. The one who set the trap in Montana. The one who nearly killed me. Possibly, Eleanor conceded, carefully mounting the scope to precise specifications. Then I should be going too. Now she did look up, fixing him with a steady gaze. You're not ready. I owe him, Briggs insisted, a flush of anger coloring his face. This isn't about debts, Eleanor said sharply. It's about capabilities. You're at 70%. Against Viper, that's as good as zero. The younger operator's shoulders slumped slightly, frustration evident in every line of his body. So I just sit here while you hunt the bastard down. Eleanor's expression softened marginally. You heal, you train, you get better. She resumed her work, hands moving with practiced precision. Because this won't end with one mission. Helios is building something bigger than we understand yet. Briggs watched her assemble the rifle with mesmerizing efficiency. How do you do it? He asked finally. Do what? Stay so calm. 15 kills in 14 minutes and you acted like you were just filling out paperwork. Eleanor paused, considering the question. Emotion is the enemy of precision, she said finally. Keller taught me that, my first instructor in Kestrel. The one who trained under Shepard. She nodded. Anger, fear, excitement. They all change your breathing, your heartbeat, your perception. A sniper can't afford that luxury. Sounds lonely, Briggs observed. The comment caught her off guard. For a moment the mask slipped and something vulnerable flickered across her face. It was, she admitted. That's why I left Kestrel, why I joined Falcon. And now you're going back into that world. Eleanor snapped the final piece of the rifle into place, the sound sharp and definitive in the quiet room. Only partly. This time I have a team. The door opened again and Walsh entered, already dressed in tactical gear. Transport leaves in 30. You ready? Eleanor nodded, lifting the assembled rifle. Always. As they prepared to leave Briggs' car, Briggs called after them. Hey, lowlight. Eleanor turned. Bring our people home, he said simply. All of them. She held his gaze for a moment, then gave a single firm nod, a promise. Damn. The Black Hawk helicopter cut through the night, its specialized sound suppression systems reducing the rotor noise to a whisper. Eleanor sat beside Shepard, both dressed in cold-weather tactical gear, their faces obscured by balaclavas and night vision equipment. Across from them sat the Delta Force commander, a compact, intense man identified only as Razor. His 6-man team would conduct the actual facility breach, while Eleanor and Shepard provided overwatch from the surrounding ridgeline. 5 minutes, the pilot's voice announced in their headsets. Eleanor checked her equipment one final time, mind already calculating wind speeds and firing solutions based on the weather data they'd received. Beside her, Shepard did the same with the quiet confidence of a man who had performed this ritual hundreds of times over decades. Target area shows minimal activity, the intelligence officer reported from the command center back at base. Thermal signatures indicate approximately 8 personnel on site. Too few, Eleanor muttered just loud enough for Shepard to hear. He nodded in agreement. Stay sharp. This doesn't feel right. The helicopter banked slightly, approaching the landing zone, a small clearing 3 kilometers from the target facility. Far enough to avoid detection, close enough for rapid deployment. Touchdown in 30 seconds. Good hunting. As the Black Hawk settled onto the frozen ground, the team disembarked with practiced efficiency. No words were needed. Each operator knew their role and executed with precision. Eleanor and Shepard broke away from the main group, moving silently through the dense pine forest toward their designated overwatch position. The cold bit through their tactical gear breath, forming small clouds that quickly dissipated in the night air. After 20 minutes of careful movement, they reached the ridgeline overlooking the Helios facility. Below the compound sat, nestled among the trees, a collection of cabins and outbuildings surrounding a central structure. Minimal lighting, maximum concealment, typical of a covert operations base. Eleanor settled into position, unfolding her rifle's bipod and nestling the stock against her shoulder. Through her thermal scope, she could make out heat signatures moving inside the buildings. Human forms going about normal activities, seemingly unaware of the approaching threat. Overwatch established, she reported quietly into her comm. I have eyes on 8, possibly 9 individuals. Normal movement patterns, no indication of alert status. Copy that, Razor's voice replied. Delta team is in position, standby for breach. Shepard, lying prone beside her, scanned the surrounding forest through his own scope. Something still feels off, he murmured. This is too easy. Eleanor didn't respond. Her attention focused on mapping the compound, identifying potential threat locations, calculating firing solutions for each. Her breathing slowed, heartbeats steady and controlled. Delta Team, execute breach on my mark, Razor ordered. 3, 2, 1 mark. Below the Delta, operators moved with lethal grace, converging on the compound from multiple angles. Their entry was textbook, synchronized, efficient, leaving no angle uncovered as they approached the main building. No reaction from Tangos, Eleanor reported, watching through her scope. Still no alert status. The Delta Team breached the central building with a muted explosion flowing inside like shadows. Seconds passed, then minutes. Command, this is Razor. Building secure, but something's wrong. Explain, the voice from command demanded. The heat signatures. They're decoys. Heating elements arranged to mimic human forms. The facility is empty. Repeat, no hostiles present. Eleanor's blood ran cold. She raised her head from the scope, exchanging a glance with Shepard. The old sniper's eyes reflected her own realization. It's a trap, she said just as the first shots rang out from the forest around them. Not from the compound, from the trees. The forest itself was the ambush. Delta Team, take cover, Shepard shouted into his comm. Sniper fire from the perimeter. Through her thermal scope, Eleanor scanned frantically, searching for muzzle flashes, heat signatures, any indication of the attackers' positions. I count at least 5 shooters, she reported, identifying faint heat blooms where the snipers lay concealed among the trees. Coordinated fire team encircling the compound. Below, the Delta, operators had taken defensive positions, returning fire into the forest, but hampered by their exposed position and lack of cover. Low light, this is Razor. We need those snipers neutralized now. Eleanor was already in motion, her rifle tracking to the nearest heat signature. She controlled her breathing, centered the crosshairs, and squeezed the trigger. The suppressed shot made little more than a muted cough in the night air. Through her scope, she saw the target jerk once, then go still. 1 down, she reported, already shifting to the next target. Beside her, Shepard had engaged as well, his own rifle cracking softly as he eliminated another threat. 2 down. The remaining snipers adjusted quickly, shifting positions to target the new threat on the ridgeline. Bullets impacted around Eleanor and Shepard, sending sprays of frozen dirt and pine needles into the air. Move positions, Shepard ordered, already rolling sideways to relocate. Eleanor followed suit, crawling rapidly to a new vantage point 20 meters away. Never fire twice from the same location, the fundamental rule of counter-sniper operations. As she settled into her new position, a bullet impacted inches from her head, the sound cracking through the air like a whip, not random fire. Targeted, precise. Only one shooter had that kind of accuracy. Vipers here, she said into her comm, her voice deadly calm despite the danger. Northeast quadrant, approximately 600 meters from the compound. Can you confirm? Shepard asked, his own voice tense. It's him, Eleanor replied, her certainty absolute. I know his signature. She scanned the northeast forest, searching for any trace of her nemesis. The thermal scope showed nothing. Petrov would know how to mask his heat signature. Another shot rang out, this one striking a Delta operator who had exposed himself momentarily. The man went down hard. Man down, Razor shouted. Taking casualties, need immediate support. Eleanor made her decision in an instant. Shepard, cover the Delta extraction. I'm going after Viper. Negative, Reynolds, the old sniper replied sharply. That's exactly what he wants. It's exactly what we need, she countered. As long as he's out there, no one leaves alive. Without waiting for a response, Eleanor slipped away from the ridgeline, moving through the forest with the silent efficiency that had made her Kestrel's most lethal operator. She didn't run toward where Petrov's shot had originated. That position would already be abandoned. Instead, she circled wide, approaching from the direction he would least expect. The forest seemed to hold its breath around her. The distant sound of gunfire faded as she moved deeper into the trees, instinct guiding her more than conscious thought. This was no longer a military operation. This was a hunt, predator against predator. Through her night vision goggles, the world appeared in ghostly green shades. Every shadow potentially concealing death. Every rustle of branches possibly signaling her doom. She moved like water around obstacles, feet finding solid purchase despite the darkness and frozen ground. The SR-25 held ready, a comforting weight in her hands. A twig snapped somewhere ahead, too deliberate to be an animal, too subtle to be an amateur. Eleanor froze, becoming one with the shadows beneath a massive pine. Through her scope, she scanned the area where the sound had originated. Nothing. Then a whisper of movement. A shadow detaching from a tree trunk 300 meters ahead. A figure moving with the same predatory grace she herself possessed. Viper. She had a shot. Not perfect, but viable. Her finger tensed on the trigger. But something held her back. This was too easy. Viktor Petrov didn't make such elementary mistakes. The realization came too late. The crack of a rifle behind her sent Eleanor diving for cover, the bullet missing her by millimeters. The figure she'd spotted was a decoy, something dragged by a nearly invisible line to draw her attention while the real threat maneuvered into position. "Clever girl," a voice called softly from the darkness, accented, cultured, with the cold precision of a surgeon discussing a difficult case. "But I taught you that trick. Remember Syria 2017? Eleanor didn't respond, Freddie moving to a new position, keeping low, and using the terrain for concealment. "The last kestrel," the voice continued, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere. "I've been looking forward to this meeting, Eleanor. Or do they call you low light now? Poetic, but a bit obvious, don't you think?" Another shot rang out closer this time. Eleanor rolled behind a fallen log, heart pounding despite her training. "You're wondering how I survived Belarus," Petrov said, his voice moving, circling. "Your shot was perfect. Collapsed my lung, nicked my aorta. I was clinically dead for 3 minutes. Did you know that 3 minutes in the dark?" Eleanor remained silent, using his voice to triangulate his position. He was moving constantly, using the same tactics she would. Never staying still, never allowing a clean shot. "When I came back, I made a promise," he continued. "I would dismantle Kestrel piece by piece. Torres, Riker, Duran, all gone now, just you left." "Wow," Eleanor finally asked, her voice carrying just far enough to be heard. "This isn't just revenge. What's the real mission, Victor?" A soft chuckle echoed through the trees. "Always the analyst, always looking for the pattern." A pause. "Did they tell you why Kestrel was really disbanded? Did they share that particular truth with their perfect hunter?" Eleanor shifted positions again, moving silently through the underbrush. 30 meters to her left, a branch cracked. Another distraction. Petrov was a master at psychological warfare, trying to unsettle her, make her doubt. "Kestrel wasn't a counter-sniper program," Petrov continued. "It was an assassination program. Political targets, civilians, things that leave stains on the soul, Eleanor." "You're lying," she replied, though a seed of doubt bloomed. There had been missions she wasn't briefed on, fully operations where other Kestrel members deployed without explanation. Ask yourself why a counter-sniper unit would be tasked with eliminating a Russian physicist, or a Chinese trade negotiator, or a journalist in Istanbul. Eleanor's blood ran cold. She hadn't been part of those operations, but she'd heard whispers, fragments of information never fully explained. "Your government created monsters, Eleanor." "I should know. I helped train the first Kestrel operators before I saw what they were really being used for." The revelation hit her like a physical blow. Petrov had been connected to Kestrel from the beginning. It couldn't be true. Yet something in his voice carried the unmistakable weight of truth. "The real mission," Petrov said, his voice suddenly closer, "is exposing what Kestrel really was. The assassination program hidden inside a legitimate military unit. And you're the last loose end." A twig snapped directly behind her. Eleanor spun, rifle raised, but too late. Viktor Petrov stood 10 meters away, his own rifle aimed directly at her heart. His face, half hidden in shadow, bore a savage scar from cheekbone to jaw, the mark of her bullet that should have killed him in Belarus. "Hello, Eleanor," he said softly. "It's time we finished our dance." For a long moment they stood frozen, two perfect killers locked in a deadly tableau, each capable of ending the other in a heartbeat, each waiting for the microscopic advantage that would mean survival. "You could have killed me already," Eleanor said, her rifle unwavering despite the impossible situation. "Why the monologue?" Petrov's scarred face twisted into what might have been a smile. "Because you deserve to know why you die. And because The crack of a rifle interrupted him, the sound echoing through the forest like thunder. Petrov's eyes widened in surprise, then narrowed in pain as he staggered backward, blood blooming on his shoulder. Not a killing shot, a disabling one. From the darkness behind him, Captain Thomas Shepard emerged, his rifle trained steadily on the wounded Russian. "You talk too much," the old sniper said dryly. "Always did, Victor." Eleanor kept her weapon trained on Petrov's mind, racing to process this new development. "You know each other," Shepard nodded grimly. "Since before the wall fell. Isn't that right, old friend?" Petrov's laugh turned into a pained cough. "The student returns to save the teacher. How touching." "He's not wrong, Eleanor," Shepard said quietly. "About Kestrel, about what it became." "You knew?" she asked, betrayal coloring her voice. "I suspected. It's why I left the program before you joined." Shepard's weathered face showed every year of his age in that moment. By then it had already changed from what it was meant to be. Petrov sank to one knee, his rifle still held loosely in his right hand. The great Thomas Shepard, America's legendary sniper, reduced to cleaning up the government's messes. "The mess is yours this time, Victor," Shepard replied. "What's the real operation? What's Helios planning?" Petrov's smile was cold despite the pain evident in his features. "You're thinking too small, old man, always were. The Canadian base, the dead Kestrel operators, they're just preludes." "To what?" Eleanor demanded, stepping closer, her rifle still centered on his chest. "To the truth." Petrov's gaze shifted to something behind them. "And it's already in motion." Eleanor felt it then, the subtle shift in the air, the sixth sense developed through years of combat that warned of imminent danger. She spun just as a new figure emerged from the shadows, weapon raised. Not aimed at her, aimed at Shepard. "Captain Morris," she breathed, recognizing the JSOC liaison from their briefing, the man who had authorized their mission. "Put down your weapon, Reynolds," Morris ordered, his aim unwavering as he targeted Shepard's back. "This isn't your fight." Shepard turned slowly, his expression shifting from surprise to grim understanding. "So that's how it is. You were Kestrel's real commander." "I was its salvation," Morris replied, "doing what needed to be done when conventional methods failed." "Assassination," Eleanor said flatly. "Political targets, civilians." "National security," Morris corrected, "sometimes requiring measures beyond the visible lines." Petrov laughed softly despite his wound. "Tell her who authorized the Istanbul journalist, or the Chinese negotiator. Tell her what Kestrel really was." Eleanor's mind raced, pieces falling into place with terrible clarity. The trap in Montana, the decoy base here. It was all to draw us out. "To draw you out," Morris clarified. "The last Kestrel operator who wasn't under our direct control. The last one who might talk if she learned the truth." "And Petrov," she asked, "why is he still alive?" "Because sometimes our most valuable assets come from unexpected places," Morris replied. Shepard's face darkened with understanding. "He's been working for you all along." "Not exactly," Petrov interjected, rising slowly to his feet despite his wound. "Let's call it a temporary alignment of interests." The forest seemed to close in around them, the night air heavy with tension and betrayal. Eleanor stood motionless, her rifle still trained on Petrov's mind, calculating options, probabilities, outcomes. "So what happens now?" she asked quietly. Morris's expression was almost regretful. "Now we tie up loose ends. Petrov disappears back into the shadows. The official report will show that you and Shepard were killed by Helios snipers while heroically saving the Delta team. And Kestrel's secrets stay buried," Shepard concluded. "For the greater good," Morris confirmed. Eleanor's finger tensed on the trigger. One shot could end Petrov. A quick pivot might take Morris before he could react. But the angles were wrong, the timing impossible. Someone would die, Shepard most likely. "There is another option," Petrov said suddenly, his eyes locked on Eleanor's. "The truth, all of it. Evidence of every assassination, every illegal operation, every line Kestrel crossed. I have it all." "He's lying," Morris snapped, trying to save himself. "Am I?" Petrov reached slowly into his pocket, ignoring Morris's warning shout. He withdrew a small flash drive. "Everything is here, and backed up to servers that will release it automatically if I don't check in every 4 hours." Eleanor stared at the tiny device, understanding its value, its danger. That's what this was really about, she realized. Not revenge, justice. Petrov's scarred face showed no emotion. Even monsters can find redemption, Eleanor. Even me. The moment stretched taut with possibility. 3 snipers, 3 weapons, 3 paths forward, each ending in blood and revelation. In the distance, the sound of approaching helicopters broke the silence. The QRF coming to extract the Delta team. Time was running out. Eleanor made her decision. Lower your weapon, Morris, she ordered, shifting her aim from Petrov to the Chilok commander. Don't be a fool, Reynolds, Morris replied. You're throwing away everything, your career, your future, possibly your life. I already did that when I joined Kestrel, she said calmly. Now I'm choosing something else. Shepard moved slowly to stand beside her, his own rifle now trained on Morris. 2 against 1, General, and we're both better shots. For a long moment, Morris held his position. Then with a resigned sigh, he lowered his weapon. You have no idea what you're doing, he said quietly, the damage this will cause. Maybe, Eleanor acknowledged, but the truth matters, even when it hurts. As the helicopter rotors grew louder, Eleanor turned to Petrov. This doesn't make us allies. The Russian nodded understanding in his cold eyes. Next time we meet, it ends differently. Count on it, she replied. Petrov melted into the shadows of the forest, disappearing as completely as if he'd never been there at all. Only the flash drive in Eleanor's hand proved otherwise. Shepard secured Morris with restraints as the helicopters landed in the clearing below. The night was ending. A new day approached, bringing with it questions, revelations, and consequences none of them could fully predict. What now? Shepard asked quietly as they began their descent toward the extraction point, their prisoner walking ahead of them. Eleanor pocketed the flash drive, her decision already made. Now we bring everything into the light. No more shadows. No more ghosts. The old sniper studied her face, seeing the transformation that had occurred. Not just a weapon anymore. Not just a hunter. Something more complex, more human. They'll come after you, he warned. People like Morris have powerful friends. Eleanor nodded, accepting this reality. Let them come. I'll be ready. We'll be ready, Shepard corrected. Falcon stays together, remember? As they reached the clearing where the Delta team was loading their wounded, Eleanor saw Walsh waiting by the helicopter, his expression a mix of relief and concern. Behind him stood the rest of Falcon, Malloy, Ridley, Harper, and even Briggs, who had apparently ignored orders to stay behind. Her team, her family. Low light, Walsh called over the rotor noise. Status. Eleanor looked back at the dark forest one last time, thinking of Viper, of Kestrel, of all the shadows she had lived in for so long. Mission complete, she replied, and it's time to come home. The helicopter lifted off into the dawn sky, carrying them away from the battlefield. But Eleanor knew this was just the beginning. The real war, the one for truth, was just getting started. 1 month later, Eleanor Reynolds stood at the window of the newly established Kestrel 2.0 counter-sniper unit at Fort Bragg. Morning light streamed through the glass, casting intricate patterns across the polished floor. Behind her, Shepard was conducting a specialized class. Malloy, Ridley, Harper, and Briggs sat attentively as the old sniper detailed the art of hunting other hunters. The Morris incident had been buried in classified congressional hearings. As expected, powerful forces had tried to cover the truth, but Petrov's data had ensured the story couldn't be completely erased. Kestrel 2.0 was the atonement, a unit genuinely created to protect, not to assassinate. Eleanor glanced down at her new insignia, the silhouette of a hawk hunting in dim moonlight. No longer ghost, no longer an invisible weapon. She had stepped from the shadows, bringing with her both truth and a new purpose. Her phone vibrated. A text message from an unknown number. Belgrade, we have unfinished business. V. Eleanor smiled faintly, deleting the message. She knew they would meet again someday. 2 snipers, 2 people forged from the same mold. Viper was still out there, still a threat, but also a keeper of secrets the world needed to know. Behind her, Briggs was practicing a sighting motion. His gestures were still awkward, but improving. They were all improving. Reynolds, Walsh's voice called from the doorway. Report just came in. Helios spotted on the Turkish border. We have a mission. Eleanor turned, her focus returning. This was her world now. Not the solitary darkness of the old Kestrel, but the dim light of a team, of family. Are they ready? She asked, glancing toward her teammates. Walsh smiled. Not like you, but they will be. Eleanor picked up the SR-25 that had become an extension of herself. Then let's move. Today we hunt. As Falcon team left the base, whispers followed them through the corridors. Other soldiers watched with a mixture of respect and wariness. A special team, a special mission, led by the woman they called Light Restraint. The quiet woman no one knew was a sniper, until she wasn't quiet anymore. The end is not where everything stops. It's where the light begins to break through the darkness.